Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee. I am Chair of Committee Dustin Hillis, joined by my colleagues of the committee. To my immediate right, Councilmember Mary Norwood. To my immediate left, Councilmember Keisha Waits, followed by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet. And ex officio members of the committee are our Council President Doug Shipman and Councilmember Antonio Lewis. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So I will make a small change to the agenda. I'm actually going to have shows APD going first. I'm going to ask that Grady's presentation take place before APD's, as I imagine APD's will be much shorter. So with that small change, I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
3 yeas, 0 nays. The agenda is adopted. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the prior meeting. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed.
4 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes are approved. Go to public comment. First up is Nate Bailey.
Afternoon, Council. My name is Nate Bailey. I'm president of the Atlanta Professional Firefighters, also president of the Georgia Professional Firefighters. Our members asked me to come here today to speak on two topics. But before I get into that, I want to speak about our current leadership that we have at Atlanta Fire Rescue. During this pandemic, post-pandemic era, there's been a lot of issues with transport services and ambulance services. So firefighters, when faced with a critical decision, sometimes they take matters into their own hands. Other fire departments punished their officers for transporting citizens in the fire truck. Our chief congratulated us and gave us a policy to do it properly. So that's the kind of leadership we have. Everything internally at Atlanta Fire is great. Morale from the mayor, you all, on down, everything is running smooth. Any issues that we do have, it's on order. It takes time to build the engines. We work together to pass the bond referendum. So everything is going great and smooth. We just have, the ongoing issue with the transport dilemma, I guess. And the members wanted me to come here and speak about the solution. This has been going on for months and months, well over a year now. So whatever y'all decide and the chief decides and the mayor, whatever package we're going to put together, let's fully implement it and let's do it full force. If it ends up us having 5 ambulances total, 10, 15, let's do it. Whatever the response matrix ends up being, the citizens don't care what it says on the side of the ambulance as long as they get one. And we don't care either. If it's our new single role paramedics or EMTs that the chief's going to hire, let's do it. And we want to be very clear about that as well. If you try to integrate the two, where you have a firefighter on a fire truck one day and then on an ambulance for 24 hours, the next shift, it can lead to an attrition problem. The chief knows that. He's been very straightforward. We fully support that plan, and we want to make sure that in the future, when he decides to leave in 5 or 10 years, or whenever he wants to, go on with a retirement, when the next chief takes the helm, because they'll look at that and they'll think that they can put the two together. Looks good on paper, might make sense to finance, but what it'll lead to is a huge attrition problem. So also, I want to thank you all for the salary increases. I'm sure you've heard it has drastically changed our morale and our attrition. So with the Atlanta Fire Rescue Training Center and paramedics and now our transport division and police training center coming online, that will definitely help us. The new engines have been ordered. The stations are going to get built. So the future looks good for us. We just need to finally solve this ambulance transport issue. And if you need any assistance from us, just give us a call and we'll knock on doors and we'll make phone calls and do whatever we need to do to be of assistance. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Honorary Jordan.
Giving honor to the Spirit of God to everyone that's here. Through thee will we push down our enemies. Through thy name will we tread them under that rise up against us. Psalms 44th chapter, 5th verse. Their interest is more than in saving their own skins. They plead that God will do it for the sake of his mercy. Drains grip when you fight against Jesus' righteous word, you ask for death because God's word says so. Perverse experience of men are corrupt minds and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is godliness. From such withdraw thyself. 1 Timothy 6 chapter 5th verse. He is conceited, understanding nothing but as a morbid interest about controversies and disputes over word, for which come envy, strife, defamation, evil suspicions, constant irritations between men who are morally corrupt in thinking. I believe James would set my house on fire to cover up evidence of his guilt. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just and good. Romans 7 chapter 12th verse. Not seeking to do evil, to disrespect. The law is holy, just, and good. The law an expression of God's righteousness and is intrinsically good. If the government or business write in their terms, conditions, or contract that they have the right to my income, Jesus created in me of $59 billion, this sounds like human trafficking to me. Human trafficking is considered as modern-day slavery by the Justice Department. Jesus created the income for his glory and a protection plan for his people, for those who seek to obey him. Is not this the fast that I've chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? Isaiah 58 chapter 6 verse. Cry aloud, shew my people their transgressions. Indicates that Isaiah was to shout against the sins of Israel and Judah. When I sent a complaint to the Justice Department about 3 or 4 years ago, they informed me of a contract I signed. So I stopped having work done in my house because businesses that offer me terms and conditions that will steal the income Christ has created in me. My kitchen sink has been stopped up for a year. I was on the end of the line with a bus driver when he decided to place his behind in my face. I quoted a scripture. I rebuked him 3 times on the way to the train station. The bus almost had 2 or 3 wrecks. This frightened me. And each time when riding with this bus driver, it happened about once time I ride with him. The bus driver left the route.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Your time has expired.
Jesus helped me to live holy and obey Jesus.
Next is Zachary Adriansons, and we have also been joined by Councilmember Byron Amos, our Vice Chair.
Hello, Public Safety Committee. I'm here as the chair of MPUX and a concerned member of the Capitol View Neighborhood Association. On the night of September 12th, a man with a full assault rifle walked the length of Dill Avenue for about 25 minutes, firing continuously. On that night, the community called 911 repeatedly and was met with either being placed on hold or told, we're not sure what we can do about it. Finally, when they did send officers out, we waited another 20 minutes for someone to show up. By that time, he had left Dill Avenue, and when I tell you he walked, he sauntered the length of Dill Avenue, as you can see on all of our Ring cameras, firing indiscriminately into the air. Afterwards, as MPUX chair and a member of the Capitol View neighborhood, I spoke with our beat officer and our Major Ricker, to find out what happened and why it took so long for officers to get there. We found that there were 4 officers that evening in our beat during the shift change who were able to attend this call. Policy says that if you're reporting to a call of an assault rifle or an active shooter, they have to have a partner, which I fully understand. My question is, why at 11 o'clock on September 12th would Zone 3 have only 4 officers who can report to an active shooter walking down a residential street? And in talks with members of the police department, why was it that the full graduating class of the Atlanta Police Academy last year went to Zone 2 when we can't get a call answered within 30 minutes for an active shooter on Dill Avenue in Zone 3? And I would like a response from Dustin Hillis if I can. And I would like a commitment that the next 2 graduating classes go to Zones 3 and 4 if possible. And I yield my time.
We generally don't respond to public comments, but I'll definitely ask our deputy chief when he comes up to present his response. Next is Megan Kaiser.
Hello. Zach has recapped the situation I'm here about. I live on Dill Avenue in Capitol View. I'm someone who could have walked out my door and gotten shot by the man who was calmly walking down our street. I understand that there was an issue of police officers being understaffed, but is that the case for all of Atlanta? And was there nobody from any other zone? Is there any sort of fluidity in police officer transfer that we as a city can come together and help out a zone when there is a shooter walking down a whole street leisurely? He had his dog with him. He might have been having a great time. It was 11 p.m. and this is a zone not particularly known for safety. So I'm not sure what type of oversight allowed for there to be only 4 available officers, and they weren't actually available because they were dealing with other issues. Of course, there were other issues. So, Councilmember Hillis, I would like to know if there's been any discussion about this, and if so, any particular solutions, possible solutions that have been raised, whether it's allowing for more fluidity between zones, ensuring that our zone gets more officers, or doing something about the shift change so that 8 doesn't suddenly become 4 when people could be out and dying. It could have been Halloween with kids. It's really terrifying. That's a main street in that area. Dill connects to Metropolitan. So are you aware of any discussion about possible solutions?
Again, we don't generally respond to public comments, but I will have Deputy Chief Peak address this, and also your Councilmember Lewis, who's here, once we get to APD's report.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Ben Lind.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee. My name is Ben Lind. I am Policy Counsel with the ACLU of Georgia, and I'm here today to speak in favor of a proposed ordinance filed by Council members Winston and Westmoreland, recognizing those negatively affected by having a criminal history as a protected class here in the city of Atlanta. We're here today, just as I voiced my support for this ordinance last week, to lift up the voices of those who are here, who I think will be speaking today. I know will be talking to their council members regarding their experiences as being negatively affected in Atlanta and having this criminal history. As you listen to those public comments, I want y'all to remember that these voices are not outliers, but these are real Atlantans with real problems, and they represent much more of a proportion of your constituency than you may realize. Beginning to that point, I would like to point out that over the span of my lifetime, those who have been given the status of a convicted felon, that percentage has quadrupled over the time in my lifetime. With regarding African Americans in the city of Atlanta, who many of you may know represent 50% of the population here in the city of Atlanta, regarding that proportion, 25% of Black adults in the city of Atlanta are convicted felons, a quarter. And that is a rise from 1980 from only 7%. I want you all, as you think about protected class, to realize how big of a proportion that is of the city of Atlanta that is affected because of having a criminal history here in this city. The city of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, and the United States all prohibit discrimination based on racial status. However, it's these racial disparities and otherwise race-neutral laws that have some of the most insidious impact. And we believe that this proposed ordinance goes a long way towards recognizing the racial disparities that come from systemic racism. And I'm very happy that this bill came to public safety, not only because you have the subject matter expertise regarding human rights ordinances, but also because this is a public safety bill. I don't have to explain to this committee the human cost that comes from unshelteredness, But I want this committee to know that these individuals, as they're returning to society from serving their sentence, completing their sentence, are 13 times more likely to experience homelessness than the general population. 13 times. All these people want to do is have a chance, a real chance, at maximizing their human potential and to re-enter society as full-fledged members of society, and we believe that this ordinance goes a long way towards doing that. With that said, we hope for this council's favorable consideration of the ordinance, and I'm available to answer any questions at any time. Thank you and have a nice day.
Next is Brian Redwine.
Hi, my name is Brian Redwine. I'm a convicted felon. I made one mistake in my whole life, and I paid for it. I would like this ordinance to come through because, it's hard for me to find a job, I've been working hard to find a job. It's been very difficult for me because, like I said, I made one mistake in my life. If you ain't never made a mistake in your life, it's hard, you know what I mean? So I've really been trying to be a citizen of a community citizen, and it's like really been hard to find work anywhere because I'm a convicted felon. I have never gotten in trouble a day in my life to this one time, and now it's hard for, one mistake gave me, now I can't, it's hard for me to find any work because of one mistake, you know what I mean? I did my time, you know what I mean? My one mistake shouldn't affect me for the rest of my life and to be a citizen again. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Barbara Jackson.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Jackson, and for 15 years, I did time. Not literally. I didn't go to jail, but my loved one did. I had her children to take care of. I did the best that I could with what I had. But I'm here to ask you, would you please change some things for felons? Because when they go to jail, you go too. Your heart goes, your mind goes, your emotion goes, everything goes right there with them. And when they come home, you're happy because, okay, the time, I've done my time. I've been released. But it don't stop. It doesn't stop because they can't find a job. It's held against them. They can't find decent housing. They can't take their children back and take care of them themselves. But I was blessed in that area. God blessed my daughter to own her own business now. So I'm blessed, truly, truly blessed. And I'm asking you to bless us by changing the laws so that they can have a purpose, get up, go to work, can take care of their families. That's what they come home for, to take over and take care of their children. I couldn't imagine, I don't want anybody else in this world to go through those 15 years that I went through. It was hard, but God got me through it. He got me through it. And he did what I asked him to do. He blessed her when she came home to soar like an eagle. Thank you very much.
The next name is maybe Deborah McQueen or Queenie. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Miss Barbara Jackson is my mom, and I'm coming for that same purpose. I've just been thinking about a lot of things, and I'm hoping that you all really hear us today with your hearts, if you can. I know that we're a committee, but everyone that's sitting up here has a heart and has a past. Like the young man was saying, when they get home, and it's time to fill out an application. Now, we're talking about those that are really trying, those that want to do well, those that don't want to be in trouble again, because we know that we have some people that's just their life. A lot of times they're in and out. But we're talking about those that have set goals for themselves, that when they get ready to fill out an application, it's always haltered by that one question: are you a felon? When it's time to get housing, discriminated against because of that one question: are you a felon? When it's time to get jobs or anything, it's that one question that is haltering a lot of people, because now they're in a position to where, do I lie to get a job or somewhere to live, or do I tell the truth? Because if I tell the truth, it is just a whirlwind of things that are going on. There was a young man whose son was dying, his baby. Can you imagine your baby dying and need a kidney, and you're a match, but you can't help your baby because you're a felon? You can't give your son a kidney. So what do? You watch your baby die. What do you do? And sometimes when people get desperate, they start to do desperate things to survive. 74% of our homeless people have been justice impacted because they just can't. They can't get back on their feet. I'm thinking about every single person, and when I get ready to say this, I'm going to say it in as much love and compassion as I can, but every single person in this room has a past, and nobody wants to be identified by their past. It's, I was a felon, not that I am a felon. It's just like in the domestic violence shelters, when they have the meetings, they have the ladies to say, your abuser. Well, he's not my abuser. That's what he used to do to me. Or in AAA, I am a recovering alcoholic. No, if it's been 5 and 10 years, you're not recovering anymore. You are somebody different. So I just want, you all to really think about that, because these people have dreams, goals. They want to heal. They want to be on their way. They want to be on their journeys to a better life. And it's always that one question: are you a felon? No, they're not felons anymore. They're citizens. They're people that are trying to get their lives together.
Sharon Turner.
Good afternoon. I am a justice-impacted individual. 1993, I was wrongfully convicted, got sentenced 15 to serve 10 years. Got out in 1995. So as everyone was speaking prior to me about the impacts of discrimination, in 2018, after being back into this society and being successful with my reentry, because during the 90s, there was no conversation about reform or any opportunities to have resources. So you had to figure it out yourself. But in 2018, turning at the age of 62, I applied for housing, which would have been subsidized in Midtown under the Atlanta Housing Authority, which the development was turned over to a private company. I was turned down twice, discriminated due to my past conviction as a felon. I ended up getting advocates to fight on my behalf, Georgia Justice Project, and then the Atlanta Legal Aid. And then I had to reach out to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in New York City that came on and being in partnership with me to fight for my rights to not to be discriminated for housing. I actually worked on that property under a different time in 2008 to 2010. I was the emergency after-hour maintenance mechanic. I took care of the residents in that building and one 6 blocks away on Westminster and Piedmont. So I'm here today in support and ask that you all consider implementing this ordinance. It is very important. It's hard for me to stand here today because if I choose to move out of the property where I live, I'm going to face that same question on my next housing application. So I've proven myself over the past 20-something years that I am a productive citizen. I volunteer in communities. I give back. I put on events. I support people like myself, and for those that have yet to have to go through discrimination due to they have a felony or an arrest. So I'm asking that you be in support today of people like myself and their families, and our entire community is impacted. If we go to convictions, we have convictions, the whole community is impacted. Thank you.
Jovan Julian.
Good afternoon. My name is Jovan Julian. I'm a former teacher in Atlanta. I taught for 2 years, and I was a graduate student at Georgia Tech. I just recently graduated, and I'm here to support the same thing that everyone has been talking about. I also volunteer on the Metro Atlanta Mutual Aid Fund. We received during COVID-19 over 2,000 applications from members of my community. Many of them justice impacted, who either were struggling to find housing to feed their children, and other situations where they were being discriminated against by other places that they could go to. As a former teacher, I worked with students whose parents weren't able to show up for them, and families that were struggling. And so I think it's important that as a community, we come together to change our laws, and I hope that you seriously consider the ordinance in front of you to make our community more able to support our community members and ourselves in building the world that we want to see. Recently, President Biden was at the UN and spoke about a country that supported its people, that whether there was women, children, whatever reasons, when comparing to other countries such as Russia and Iran, he spoke about a country that wanted to do better. So I hope that you all can support us, can support Atlanta in figuring out a way to really show up for everyone and consider all of our citizens as people worthy of the city that we live in. Thank you.
Julian Rose.
How y'all doing? My name is Julian Rose. I am an educator, and I'm also a graduate student at Georgia Tech and Emory. I'm also involved in a number of community organizations. I'm here to support the same ordinance. Housing, income, education, and health are fundamental tenets of survival in our society. And they're really important for communal wellness too. We will not have thriving, healthy communities unless people can access housing, a form of income, education, and health. So if folks cannot get housing, income, and education and health care, what do you expect folks to do in order to survive? Legitimately, if you couldn't access those things, what would you do? We have a responsibility to allow folks to get back on their feet. These folks have already served, in some cases, sentences that are not justified. Bless you. And then they come out and they expect to be able to get on their feet, to be able to become full citizens, to be able to participate in what we are building, this community. And in many ways, because of their experience with the criminal justice system, they are completely barred from doing that. My sister is a brilliant person, and she was arrested when she was 16 at a Dollar Tree with friends doing whatever. Maybe they stole, I don't know, $5, $10. You can only fit so much at Dollar Tree. And, you know, it's 20 years from now. She's 36 now. And she's still struggling to find work. She went to nursing school, became an LPN. And still she can only work at the nursing contractors that work terrible hours. She has 2 sons, struggle to find health care, struggle to find childcare, struggle to find housing still. Our family just this last week was brainstorming how we're gonna get her an apartment because she has to move. Imagine that, not just the regular housing market troubles. We are struggling to find her and her 2 kids housing simply because she was arrested at a Dollar Tree 20 years ago. This is a common occurrence here and across the country. And so I think it's our duty now to undo the discrimination and protect these people from discrimination, because that's the right thing to do. And I really wonder what we are saying if we allow justice-impacted people to be discriminated against simply because they've been in the system. Thank you.
Next public speaker is Bridget Simpson.
Greetings, everybody. I'll make it really quick. My name is Bridget Simpson. I am the co-director of an organization, Bard Business. As the folks, you see the folks that are standing up, all have been impacted. We were actually asked by the mayor's office from Councilman Westmoreland for this to be held for a cycle here, but still wanted to ask for your consideration once it is time for you all to vote on it. Housing is, I served a 10-year sentence. I applied to 40 places, was told no to all 40 places. Though I was charged as an accessory and I graduated top of my class from everything that I've ever been a part of, I have always done well, but it was impossible to. There are so many collateral consequences, 44,000 if folks would like to take some time to look at them. We are simply asking for an opportunity to live and to be human beings. And we thank you all for taking this time to listen to us and to understand that if something were to happen to this little one in my hands, I couldn't be her caretaker. I could not be the person that collects the check for her because I am formally incarcerated. I could not give her my liver. I couldn't do anything for her because I am formally incarcerated. So we're just asking for an opportunity to be human. The young lady that stands next to me, her mom was falsely accused and missed all of her birthdays, and very recently they were united. And I know she didn't sign up and we won't pass her time, but it's all of us. All of us know at least one person that has been impacted in this very intimate way, and we just ask you to draw on that experience. Thank you.
Next, we will move on to public comment. I did want to, for you all that so eloquently comment about the legislation of Councilmember Westmoreland and Councilmember Winston. It is the request of the administration and the authors to hold this paper until the next meeting, which is 2 weeks. So we'll hold it for 2 weeks time certain. So it'll automatically be on our agenda for October, I believe that's October 10th. Yes, October 10th. That has been the request. So I know we have some more legislation and some presentations to go. So I didn't want you all to have to stick around just to see that happen. Just wanted to let you know that. Next, speaking of, we will move on to the presentations. First up, we will have We've invited Grady Hospitals Ems to present to us today about their service and their process, given the issues with response times, which again is not just a issue with Grady, it's an issue with our city departments as well, police, fire, and an issue with EMS across the state and I imagine the country. So welcome, please introduce yourself and looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Hillis. I'm John Hanson, Senior Vice President, Grady EMS. Just glad to be here before you and the council members today. Thankful for the opportunity, thankful for you coming back in the spring to meet with us, to talk about the challenges that are going on. First of all, would like to also recognize the team that I have with me, Mr. Ryan Loke, our Chief Health Policy Officer, Ms. Danielle Hackett with our Media Relations, Senior Strategy Executive Vice President Shannon Sale, and Director of Operations Aaron Vickery. First of all, I want to thank you guys for the job you're doing. The last 2.5 years have been beyond challenging. I know you're facing a number of fronts, and we appreciate the job that you're doing. Your job, very similar to ours, 24/7. You know, you're a council member wherever you go, whatever you do, and it follows you, and the hard work you do is to be recognized. Second, I want to talk about the very subject we're talking about, the men and women that are running into the situations that our community faces every day, and that being in the way of public safety. Our firefighters, our police officers, and our EMS providers are short-staffed, but they're still running into the same challenges every day, every call, every minute of every day, 24/7. So we applaud all of those members. I don't know one situation they've run from, but they've ran into all of them. And there's much to be said for that, and most appreciative to all of those in public safety. Okay, so we want to talk basically about our system. Do I click the slides or do you guys move? Okay. Okay. So basically, I want to make sure that everyone kind of understands how our system's laid out. Basically, Grady's been operating EMS for over 100 years. And as it's evolved and the community needs have evolved, we've tried to be as dynamic as that and move as well. Much more than ever, we've been faced that in the last 2 years. Pre-pandemic and post-pandemic are just two different worlds. I think everyone in the room can appreciate that and understand that. So I want to make sure you got a good understanding of the scope of our system, kind of how we operate our system. So the general scope is we run a system status management. So we spread the resources that we have throughout the city based on historical data. So that data tells us where the most incidents are and the volume of those incidents, and we place our units strategically around the city to best respond to that. So you can imagine in the last 2 years of the staffing shortages, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation, you've got fewer resources spread it out over the same geography and the challenges that exist with that. So to go down some of the services we have a mobile crisis unit. I think everyone can understand the challenges that we have in mental health. That mobile crisis unit is paired with a social worker with a paramedic, and they respond to any unit or access to needed for a psychiatric call. So as those grow, we have got to grow that astronomically over the coming years because that's one of our main challenges. Mobile stroke unit. As we know, in most medical situations, timing is everything. We have a triage process that allows us to dispatch a mobile stroke unit that responds specifically to criteria that initially come forward on a stroke patient or a potential stroke patient. Then that gets to our ALS, BLS ambulances, our paramedic and EMT responses, licensed siren or non-licensed siren. We have MRVs. We'll talk a little bit what that is. That's a new mobile vehicle that's a one-person unit with an EMT that responds to lesser acuity calls. Okay. And our event teams, we have event teams that support all of the large events in Atlanta for basically the 4th of July road race, the Peachtree Road Race that is, and a coming up Pride event. That'll give you an example. We respond to most of the facilities around town, the large events. We also have added nurse triage and dispatch paramedic into our comm center. So, and that gets us to how a call comes in. And most of our conversations, and Chairman Hillis has been over to our facility, and I welcome all of you to attend at any time you want. The doors are open, and we'll be glad to have you to see our ACE accredited center. Our center has been in place since 2007. We were nationally accredited in excellence in 2012, and we've maintained that since. How does a call come into 911? What is the process? So when you have an emergency call in the city of Atlanta, it's going to the primary PSAP, which is the answering point, which is your 911 for the city of Atlanta. And once that call is determined to be an EMS-related call, the dispatchers from Atlanta send that to us, which are the secondary PSAP. And so we have certified dispatchers and call takers that are nationally accredited answering those calls, and they're triaging that call based on the information that the provider is giving us at the time. So that communication coming from the caller is directly what we have, and they walk through a triage process to prioritize that call. So while we're at this point, it's best to understand that prioritization of the calls is the most critical thing right now, because as staffing is lower, we've got to make sure we get the right resource to the right call. We want the most emergent call to get the fastest response. Okay, so when that initial call comes in, the 911 provider for City of Atlanta can either stay on the line in what we call a warm transfer to our call taker, and once they can either stay on the line or they can drop off the line, depending on the level of the call or the level of the system in Atlanta at the time. They may or may not stay on that call, but once it's safely handed off to our team, then our call taker will take that information and they'll work through the call with the caller. Once they've triaged that call, they're either going to send it one of two paths. It's going directly to an ALS unit of what we call in our new system a Delta truck, or it's going to a less emergent side, which is our Bravo trucks. So at that time, those Delta trucks are responding to primarily all ALS calls, most emergent, highest acuity. The idea is we do not want to let a call that has a high acuity be down the line for some odd reason. So that's the main reason our system is designed the way it is. The lower level calls will wait longer if there is a wait time given the volume in the system at the time. And that's part of our priority dispatch system. So once that dispatch is made, a unit is dispatched. If there is a call on the line, then we have a paramedic that can, if a call is holding, they will jump on the line every 15 minutes of that call or get an update on what's going on in the call to either elevate that response or change the response on that particular call. Okay, data. This is very important right here to talk about. Okay, we talked about staffing levels, and we're going to talk about that more in depth, but when we think about the volume, we think about what's going on in the community. Since 2019, our call volume has increased over 9%. So that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 124,000 calls answered versus 138,000 we're on track to answer this year. That's a big jump, but you've got to couple that with the reduced staffing and look at the size of the challenge there. Currently now we're in the summer months. Well, we just hit fall a couple days ago, but June, July, and August is a standard. We go up about 15%. So that's a pretty large number. You're talking 1,500 to 2,000 calls for each given month additional that we're manning in the summer months when there's a typical drop off of staffing as well. So let's match that with the acuity of calls. We talked about the acuity of a call. And what we're talking about is the more emergent. If you look on the graph, the one that says acuity of the calls, you see the delta. So our calls are based on Echo, Delta, Charlie, Bravo, and Alpha, with Alpha being the lowest, Echo being the highest. So if you look at the most emergent type of acuity call, we're talking about Echo or Delta, they have climbed significantly. So that means our fewest resources, which are paramedics, are the ones we have to have on those calls specifically, and some Charlies. As that's climbed and staffing's lowered, that's made it more of a challenge on EMS. Look at the call times on the right. So that's time on task, on scene, and hospital times. The hospital times, we can see they've increased over 30%. That's huge. That's the time that we're at the hospital waiting to get a truck off the wall. If we can't get them off the wall, we can't get them back on the street. We've worked with the healthcare providers throughout the city, and they're doing everything they can. They're facing the same things we all are, staffing challenges. So at the top, that increases our time on task. So when you've got resources that have increased their time on task from around 80 minutes pre-pandemic to about 110 minutes, that's from the time they get the call to the time that they get to the scene and take them to the hospital, and then they're relieved from the hospital. Pretty lengthy time there. That's one of the significant challenges we're facing. And we can talk briefly there too when we get to another section about the effects of the closing of AMC and what it's going to do those times. So the next few slides we'll walk through clinical care, basically responding to 911 calls at the right time based on national protocols and our EMD center. The work experience, we've done a lot of work around trying to help our staffs have a good work experience, a positive environment, having the compensation and equipment they need to be on the street and be confident in the job they're doing and have a good place to work. Needless to say, through the pandemic, these employees that we have now were here then, and they're still here. You know, we've lost a lot in the industry. We've lost a lot of paramedics, EMTs. We've lost a lot of people in the healthcare industry through the pandemic. So those that are still here on the streets, they've come through a lot, and they're really hard workers. Partnerships. We want to talk about our partnerships with you. We want to talk about our partnerships with fire and PD and all public safety. This diagram doesn't pick up very well, but I'll kind of walk you through it briefly to keep it high level, but this is the system we created that basically it divides the response of care based on the highest level of acuity. Incorporates nurse advice, what we call our MIH program as well. So a call will come into 911 centers, goes one of two paths. The path to the right, you will see that's immediate response. We know immediately right off the bat that's a 911 response, lights and siren. That's where they're going to get an ambulance dispatched to the scene, and they'll get some supervision response in there to mix. The left side is the lower level path. That's the path where we're implementing other systems to try to help take care of those calls. They're just as important. They're just not as emergent. So the things we've layered in there is a nurse advice team where when you call, you'll be able to get an RN on the phone, let them talk you through that call. If that warrants care via the phone or via telehealth, you'll be sent down that path to lessen the numbers of ambulances going out to the calls and get some care to the public via telemedicine, which has been very helpful through the pandemic, and we think it's the wave of the future. The other layer in there is the MRV. Some of these calls turn out to be a lesser acuity. The patient just wants to go to the hospital, but they can ambulate or they can walk. They're at a level that they can be taken to the hospital. A single person MRV will go out to that call. We have 4 of those running now. As we've implemented that into the system, it seems to be very helpful, and we're looking for great things out of that. Mobile integrated health and our telehealth model allows us to talk to a patient via the screen and speak directly with them, and we'll have a provider out that can take their vitals from the field. That's a great service coming. We've implemented it a little bit pre-pandemic, but staffing levels got down, so we've just now reintroduced it. Okay, work experience. Now, you see some articles here, but we've got numbers of articles. These are recent. These are this summer, some of this week. It's not just here, it's worldwide. You know, there's a letter sent to Congress late in 21 that reflected the turnover rate, 20 to 30%. You know, these are medical certificate individuals that we need, and it's hard to reproduce that quickly. We have an education division that we offer classes to personnel to advance, but we can't bring them in fast enough either. There's a lot of work going on in that front. We'll talk a little bit about that on a few slides down. We're not immune to the 30% vacancy rate, and you can see it's not just in America, it's worldwide. Okay, we talked about high skill level. We need paramedics, we need EMTs, we need EMTAs, and we want to match that skill set with the job they're doing because they're passionate about the job they do. But we want to promote that advancement and the compensation. We've increased the compensation to our employees in EMS in excess of market, well above market rate to attract and maintain the teams that we have. And we're going to continue to be the leader. That's our plan, and we want to make our place a great place to work and to stay. Advancement bonuses. If our paramedics, our EMTs want to become EMTA, we pay for it, and we'll give them a bonus to do it. We do the same for our EMTAs. If they want to become a paramedic, we give them a bonus, and we pay for their school. So we also offer that to newcomers to come in. We'll pay for their school. We need more in our industry. We're also offering referral bonuses. We can't do it without our team members. It's a great opportunity for those in the field to match that person in the seat beside them with someone that they know will come out there on the firing line and do the job with them. And we offer retention bonuses as well. For those that are in the seat that do it every day, they deserve the same opportunity. We've also recently started new engagement teams with focus groups that talk about the specific changes we need in our industry and in our organization by those that are doing it in the field. You know, some of our greatest changes and implementations have come from our staff members that are in the field every day. You can't see it all in the numbers, but you can see it when they're talking and they're working in groups of what they need in the way of supplies, equipment, compensation, quality of life as they're out working tirelessly in the field. Okay, before I hand this off, I want to talk a little bit about those in the field. As you know, many things that we do in every industry, we have those that are willing to take the challenge, right? Willing to go out there and face what no one else faces. And a lot of things that Grady does and Grady EMS is they go places that other people won't go, or either other people can't go. There's an opportunity to rise above, and I would say without a doubt, in our next slides here to talk about the work experience at Grady, you'll see a lot about those who know how to get into the middle of it and keep going no matter what, call after call, situation after situation, and rising above those things that challenge them on a day-to-day. So for our next part of the presentation, our operations director, Aaron Vicker, will come up and talk about the work experience at Grady and what it is to be a Grady paramedic or EMT.
Thank you all for this opportunity. I get the honor of discussing the amazing work that some of our folks do, and I'm going to take a moment here to highlight one of the paramedics that works for us and how we build and develop our teams within Grady. Jacob Clay, he's a paramedic with us. He started in 2016 at Crestview as a certified nursing assistant. He attended EMT and AEMT school, which Grady paid for. We supported him, we paid for it. They made sure he had a schedule that would accommodate his education. He then transferred to Grady EMS in April 2020. He was an AEMT at the time. We then paid for him to attend paramedic school with the Grady EMS Academy. Jacob became a paramedic in March 2022. Jacob was one of the paramedics who was at a cardiac arrest save on the 4th of July with his partners at AFRD. That individual is at home and doing well. So we're very proud of the work that all of our paramedics and AEMTs and EMTs do out in the field every day. And you know, he also has a personal life as well, and I hit some of those highlights there, but he's important to us. Every single one of our employees is important to us. So I wanted to take an opportunity to highlight one of our amazing team members. Also want to talk about our partnership. So our partnership with AFRD is critical to our success. We have an excellent partnership with them. We talk daily at the chief level, and we talk, I would say, almost hourly at the field level. So our field supervision meets regularly with AFRD's field supervision, and they talk and they communicate and they figure out what's needed out in the field and how we can help and how we can work together to solve problems. So it is key to our success. We've been able to sit down with AFRD to discuss the opportunity to find calls where, as we've discussed, we're all in a staffing shortage, find calls where we don't need AFRD to respond so they can relieve resources in order to respond to fires and to respond to hazmat calls and things that Grady EMS can't respond to ensure that they had the ability to do that. And we are the 911 zone provider in the city of Atlanta, and we embrace the fact that AFRD has come to the table and said, hey, let us help you out. We are happy for that. We support that. We've presented an MOU to AFR that includes how it will look when the 2 units that will be located in the southwest portion of Atlanta and how they'll be dispatched and utilized on calls. So we're working hand in hand with them, and we've met with them and the state on this particular topic. They also have implemented progressively things like Right Site, where they can help low acuity callers get health care that may not necessarily need to go to an emergency room. And we constantly look at workflow management and innovation. That includes we share our CAD. Their 911 center can see our CAD, our 911 center can see their CAD, so we're constantly looking at what's going on out in the field. Are there any updates? How can we communicate to serve the community the best way possible? And as well, we communicate with APD. We've initiated, with the help of AFR, we've initiated joint public safety meetings to discuss modifications to our system and improvements to our system. I think the one thing that we all were able to come to the table and agree on is we can't do what we did 5 years ago. Things are changing, and we need to change with how we respond to the community, what the needs are of the community. And then we communicate with their leadership regularly. If there are questions about responses, if there's concerns, we discuss it, and it brings to our attention opportunities for improvement. Also, on our partnerships, so we have opportunities, and we talk about those regularly. We have huge opportunities to improve. And we look at those, and we talk about those, and we find ways to improve. I was discussing with Chairman Hillis about something that he had brought to our attention that we developed a new policy around. And so wanted to take a quick opportunity to talk about our amazing partnerships with AFR and some big saves. So although we have opportunities, we do a lot of good work out there, and our people do some amazing things. So a couple examples really quickly. On September 8th, we co-responded with AFR to a cardiac arrest of a 26-year-old. It is reported that that individual had pulses and was doing well when they arrived at the emergency room. On September 2nd, Grady EMS crews responded to a 36-year-old male with multiple stab wounds. This person had 6 stab wounds to the thorax, to the chest, and to the neck. It involved their lung. They quickly worked together, and this person was taken to the trauma center and released 2 days later. On August 10th, units responded to a 65-year-old, and AFR was on scene, and they were providing ventilations because the person was passed out. The family had found them on the ground, and it was determined by the paramedics once they arrived, the Grady EMS paramedics, that there was a airway compromise, and the person was actually choking on a foreign object. They were able to remove that. The person was able to start breathing on their own. They transported them to the hospital. Again, another success story. July 6th, we transported an 8-day-old female to the hospital. The patient had periods of not breathing and went into cardiac arrest. This 18-day-old is doing well today. Our mobile stroke unit, one of our ALS units responded to a call and identified that the person that they were responding to possibly had an intracranial hemorrhage, and they called the stroke unit. The stroke unit arrived on scene, and they're part of a trial that is to give intracranial hemorrhage patients medications. They have to do it within 2 hours of identifying that there is a need for, that there's a possible blockage. And so they got on scene, and the CT was performed on scene in the mobile stroke unit, and they identified that the patient was in fact having an intracranial hemorrhage. They gave the drug through this trial at 1 hour, 49 minutes, just minutes before the deadline. This 43-year-old was released to rehab after spending time in the neuro ICU. So we're very proud of them. We're proud of the 2 cardiac arrest saves that AFR and Grady had at the Peachtree Road Race. So thank you for the opportunity for me to highlight some of our wins and some of the really, really good work that our folks do out in the field. And finally, we have lots of opportunities. We talk about the opportunities to improve staffing and all the things that we're doing to do that and to get more units on the road and to get more people out there responding to the calls. We're also working in conjunction with city leaders to do a 911 campaign on when to call 911. I know we've all seen it, we've all heard it. There are people calling 911 for circumstances that don't necessarily need a public safety person to respond, and we want to make sure that we educate on the use of 911. Our mental health response, we have our co-responder unit out in the system, but it isn't enough. And we're working every day to add units. We have a partnership with Grady Hospital where we've received grant money to put more co-responder units out on the street, to include co-responder units in coordination with APD, where we don't have to require APD to respond with us, which will release APD units to to the citizens when we can handle the mental health emergencies. And again, we're just constantly looking at ways to collaborate our responses and how we manage public safety. And we're dedicated, and we're here. We've been here over 100 years, and we want to be here 100 more, serving the city of Atlanta and the community. And we're very proud of the work that we do out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman, that concludes the presentation, and we're available if you have questions or have anything.
And before we do move on to questions, you all brought up and the fact, and we discussed in our meeting how this was brought about in EMS, and AFRD is going to be rolling out 2 EMS units in an area of Southwest Atlanta. So, Chief, or one of your assistants or deputies want to come up, and if you could just tell us a little bit about how those 2 units will work and be dispatched, and what areas they'll serve, and if and how they'll be used to fill in gaps elsewhere.
Good afternoon, Councilman, Chairman Hillis, President Shipman, council members. Rod Smith, Atlanta Fire Chief. So we have, as mentioned by Grady and Aaron and the team, we have been working very diligently with Grady to determine where those service level gaps are and how do we intend to meet those needs moving forward. We realize that there are resource challenges, and so Atlanta Fire Rescue saw an opportunity to step in and to assist with some of the problems that I believe that were created by things like annexation and things of that nature. So the immediate need that we saw was on the southwest side of town, where we were struggling with an automatic aid agreement we have with a neighboring jurisdiction to respond, not knowing or being able to guarantee what resources would be responding down in those areas to service the citizens of Atlanta. And so the decision was made to put the transport units on the south side. That would alleviate some of the pressure that Grady has as well, because they not only service us on that south side, but they service some other fire departments down in that area. And so our goal was to be more intentional about how we respond down in those areas, especially now in hindsight, not knowing that we were going to have the hospital closures or the disparities going on. The goal was to get to the citizens as quickly as possible and get them into a transport position in that pre-hospital setting, and to get them in town into some of our premier hospitals so that they would have that same or similar chance of survival should those tragedies to occur. And so the goal working with Grady was to look at where can we fit into that gap, and that gap was clearly on that southwest side of town. And so that is the culmination, if you will, of bringing that EMS station up. Our intention also is to help on that south side of town by providing or returning our rapid response units. Historically, we're referred to as quick units. We'll be bringing those back in. Those are 2-person units, typically pickup trucks or SUVs. They'll be responding as well to EMS calls, and we'll be assisting Grady on that south side with managing that zone.
Just a follow-up question on that for you, Chief, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues for questions first.
Yes, sir.
To either you or Grady. What is the timeline for that service to roll out? And, while this area has been identified as the primary area to be served, for example, if we have units on Bankhead Highway that have been waiting for transport for, 40, 60 plus minutes, maybe Grady doesn't have a unit available. Will those units be able to flex, and instead of transporting, as Mr. Bailey said, via an engine or a truck or otherwise, will we be able to summon those units, if they're available on our side as well, to do that transport?
So the quick units will float based on call volume in the city, but they are primarily housed on the south side, and that's just so the individuals will have a fixed location to report to work, but they will move throughout the city based on the call volume. And our goal is to remove the engines or replace the engines on the scene of those calls where we have those extended wait times, clearly in putting those engines back in service. And we'll continue to work with Grady to manage those calls where we have those extended call volumes with the intent of getting those down as well. We're also working with our assessment and planning office to determine exactly where we need to insert ourselves on the north side of town as well. And so we're looking at all of the options, including having quicks specifically assigned to that north side of town, as well as the possibility of establishing an EMS station on the north side.
The timeline for that,
Station
for
30.
both the quick units and for the 2 ambulances in Southwest?
Okay, so we're still tied into that timeline for supply chain issues. And so we're waiting on the delivery of the ambulances. The quick units, I believe they have come in and they are on their way to get lights put on them so the quick units can go in service as soon as they arrive. We'll be hiring additional personnel. They will be civilian personnel to work on those units. And we're looking at the EMS station opening around Thanksgiving, the first part of December.
I'll turn it over to my colleagues for questions. Councilmember Overstreet.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Can you remind me of your names, both of you? So usually we like to have the names on the presentations, like right
Sure.
in front, so that.
John Hanson and Aaron Vickery.
Vickery.
Yes, ma'am, Vickery.
Thank you so much for your presentation today. Lots of information here. I definitely want to let you know how, I mean, we couldn't have made this up as to how important it is that we've positioned ourselves as a city with this partnership, because no one could have known where we would be today. I've shared with everyone that my husband is a physician at Atlanta Medical, and we found out about its closing from the AJC while I was on committee meeting, I might add. And luckily, we are in a place as a city where we are developing these new innovative ways of reaching into the community. And so thank you for that partnership. At this time, it's invaluable, and no one could have known just how invaluable it would have been. I will also say I'm receiving phone calls from constituents with the situation from Atlanta Medical that stretches further than we would think. People think just Atlanta, but it's stretching all the way inside. The tentacles are inside the communities. I have a 78-year-old lady that is very, she's an active senior, and so is her husband, but they've been going to clinics on Camp Creek and on Fairburn for the last 15 years, and those are actually going dark also on November the 1st. So it's reaching into the communities, and it's, you know, it floors me that we were, you know, pushed back to up against the wall pretty much, to having to figure all of this out, to figure out how to reach into the communities to help. And this is a start. So I know none of this is easy for Grady either. So your presentation here, and this is wonderful that we are where we are, you know, with the partnering, because now it's a necessity, because this isn't even just about Atlanta. It's about the whole South region of Georgia, really, because it stretches to East Point and College Park and, you know, even Clayton County, and not just Fulton County. I mean, it's everyone's impacted. So, you know, this is much needed. My question to you is just what you were going to get to. How does this affect Grady, the closing of 2 major hospitals that serve such a huge region?
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. The partnership, I want to say that once again because you led on with that. That is, we couldn't ask for a better partner than AFRD and Atlanta PD. And this council to support them and us, and we appreciate that very much. The unfortunate closure is impacting everyone. You saw the wall times, you saw the hold times. We answer 30 to 40, we take 30 to 40 patients per day to AMC. So those will have to go other places. We are working on how we disperse those to the city, but often those will be based on the call level at the time. The partnership that the chief mentioned, we welcome that. We answer 350 to 400 calls a day, depending on the time frame. So that help is much needed. So it will have an impact on those hold times, wall times, as well as the hospitals, because you're taking those calls and putting those into the hospital.
Okay, well, I just want you to know that I'm here to help. Council is, I'm sure we all stand ready for these partnerships because now more than ever, they're needed. And we need to be innovative about it. We just need to be open about where we are going with our partnerships because we need things that we didn't know we needed just a month ago. So thank you. And with that, I yield.
Councilmember, colleagues, questions, comments? President Shipman.
Thanks for being here today. I'm curious if you know yet whether or not any of the state money that's been announced by the governor can be used for investments in covering some of the additional calls that you've been talking about, or whether that is restricted in some way simply to capital.
I can yield that answer. I think I know it, but I'll yield.
Good afternoon, and thank you again for having us. We are grateful to be able to make this presentation today. I'm Shannon Sale, the Chief Strategy Officer at Grady Health System. To answer your question, yes, that is the funding from the state is specifically for capital to increase our bed capacity at Grady for that volume that we anticipate that will come. We anticipate about 50 to 70% of that inpatient volume will come to Grady. Right now, we are at capacity and often holding folks in the emergency department, so it's to address that need. We do know, and I often say, I've said to our other constituents, the hospital is one part of it. The front end of the hospital, how you get to the hospital, the clinics that you just mentioned, that's a big part of what's going to need to be addressed. And then the back end, where do people go when you're discharged from the hospital, having places to help folks for that recovery post-acute will be a really important part of it. The funding right now, the funding that we received is just for that hospital component.
A few things I wanted to talk about and share, and I like sharing, things that I've experienced and happened myself. Maybe I get more of these calls than my colleagues because I'm not just a lowly council member to my constituents. I'm also an ICU nurse. But one story that, again, doesn't just involve Grady, but our processes, whether it be AFRD or APD as well. One that came up is had a constituent that, for whatever reason, she did not have my cell phone number. She had sent me a Facebook message. She'd been waiting on Grady at that time for, I believe, around an hour or so. Her mother had just been discharged from the hospital from a surgery on her artery, one of her arteries, and she had fell in the driveway. Was told to stay there, not move, and I was out doing my district work on a Thursday or Friday, and check back in. Well, there's still no one, and AFRD, as was mentioned, they're scaling back what they are responding to, and so for whatever reason, it got classified as that. This doesn't need an AFRD response, but Grady was sending an ambulance. Hot day, storms were approaching, not necessarily things that your call system will take into account, but are real issues. Ended up calling Chief Smith, Station 28 in the same neighborhood, just a few minutes away, so sent Engine 28 to respond, because one, I just wanted to get this elderly person assessed, and if it was safe to get her off of this hot driveway and out of this approaching storm. They responded very quickly after that call. Grady pulled in a few minutes behind them. Unfortunately, they also diverted an ambulance from another call, so I don't know what the outcome of that call ended up being, but my understanding is there was some process changes there, perhaps with Grady and AFRD, certainly on the next example I'll give, but if you could just talk a little bit about that and how we're you have and are looking to improve on that process.
Certainly. And as that went through the triage process, and I'll let our director speak on the specifics about the call, but I think she mentioned it in the presentation, Ms. Vickery did, about your intervention and bringing it to our attention actually helped us with medical direction also and changing some protocols for some wording that unfortunately had her on the sidewalk longer than she should have been based on the circumstances. So, Ms. Vickery, you want to kind of talk about that call?
Yeah, absolutely. When I received that call from Chief Turner, we knew that AFR was responding and we were sending a unit out there. And this lady had been sitting out in her driveway for quite some time. AFR immediately provided care, then the transport unit arrived. And one of the things we identified in the course of looking at this call, we found an opportunity to fix the system and the response for a call such as this. When somebody calls and talks to an emergency medical dispatcher about a fall, there's nobody there to ascertain if there's an injury. So they advise that person not to move. So one of the process changes we have made is if they are outside, if they are in the elements, if they're in a situation that could cause yet another medical emergency, then we will either request our partners at AFR to respond to assess the situation initially to see if that person can be moved. We will send a single responder out to ascertain if there's an opportunity to move them if we don't have an ambulance available, or we will simply upgrade that call in order to ensure that somebody is not sitting out in the elements awaiting an ambulance. So those are process changes that we put into place for a call such as that.
Thank you for that. And another story to share, and again, sharing these just to show that, when we all get complaints and issues brought to our attention, but, it's actually being used to make needed changes. We're not just, pointing and shaking fingers at people and say, bad, bad, bad.
Right.
But the other one, not necessarily a Grady change that was implemented, because I don't think you all ever got there before the patient left, but there was an injury on the belt line, a possible concussion, to my understanding, that APD rolled upon in their bike patrol, and they radioed it in, and so it wasn't treated like a normal 911 call. They ended up staying there for probably a little over an hour before AFRD even got there, because there were some location issues and receipt of that. Again, not a call, but a radio. And so that brought up issues with how APD is handling these calls, how AFRD is responding, and how the Beltline is marked for emergency issues. So one of the things, starting with the Beltline first, is they have went and are implementing a new mile marker system that will actually be integrated into the computer-aided dispatch system at 911. So that is a great change the Beltline is making. I recommended that to Interim Chief Shearbaum that we need to get a higher level training for these police officers that are out on these special assignments on the Beltline, just because of the nature of what is going on there. We have a lot of people biking, walking, there's conflicts, people can fall, et cetera, and injure themselves on the concrete. So that is something that they agreed to look into and implement that change. And then AFRD, Chief, if you want to speak a little bit about some of the changes that you all are looking to implement there, just with, again, you'll be aided a lot by the change in the dispatch system, but, we have, like I said, APD has bike teams, you all have bike teams at the airport. Is that something that is being looked at for the Beltline on y'all's team, or any other changes that y'all are looking to implement because of that call?
Yeah, so definitely. So we've been working with the mayor's office, taking the lead on this one as we expressed the challenge that we had responding to the Beltline. And so we've been working collaboratively with the Beltline team, police department, E911, and we are revising our response plan to the Beltline. The fire department's portion of it is that we are identifying those entry points on the Beltline. Those locations or those mile markers are going to be geocoded and put into the E911 system to allow us to identify a lot quicker what units will actually respond to that area and how do they actually get into that Beltline. And we're talking about doing some pilots to make sure that it is working effectively once we get all of the pieces together.
Thank you for that. And as I've mentioned in previous meetings, while, the Beltline is certainly number one in volume and popularity, a number of us also have, either spur trails or standalone trails currently out in our district that this needs to be looked into in as well. For my example that I provide in my district, Proctor Creek, there are sections of the Proctor Creek Trail that don't have any intersecting roads for miles. So that is something that needs to be looked at so we can make sure that we are responding as quickly as possible and to those calls. So thank you for that. Any other questions, comments from colleagues? All right. Thank you all so much for coming and presenting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, council members. We're in it together. Call us. We'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Before we move on to APD's presentation, I did want to just take a moment to acknowledge a horrific death of APD officer Lieutenant Kramer. He passed away last week, was only 42 years old, an 11-year employee of APD, I understand. So if we could, we'll just take a moment of silence for him. All right, thank you. And we'll keep Lieutenant Kramer and his family and friends and colleagues at APD in our thoughts and prayers. With that, Chief Pete.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hillis, and all the other Overstreet, Amos, Waits, Norwood, and yes, boom, we just thank you. Let me start off by just saying, Deputy Chief Timothy Peak, Atlanta Police Department, we certainly thank you for recognizing our dear fellow Zachary Kramer. Yes, he went on home, he passed away, and so we thank you for acknowledging that. We will certainly be doing all that we can to support the family going forward. There'll be a number of tributes that we will do with the family even as early as this Thursday, and another few initiatives just to ensure that they know that they're not alone, because death and bereavement certainly can strike all of us, and we want to be as much help as we can. So thank you for that. As we prepare for this particular public safety briefing moving forward for this actual period, is for week 37, which ended in September 17th. And so what we find ourselves in for this particular period, although there's a 25% increase in overall crime for this singular week, 509 versus 408, what we'll do is a better focus. It's not uncommon to have a week to where there's a one-off, where there's a certain trend that's going on. Very well may not be anything significant to it, but we know that there's a lot of activity. Delayed reporting, some unfounds on the front end, but nevertheless, what we do is we look at the 28-day and the previous 28-day to really and truly look at a trend. So as you look right in the middle, lower bottom, the 28-day is actually at 0%. So there's no gain nor loss as far as what we're doing for crime fighting. One of the things that we really and truly do want to highlight is at this particular point, when we look at violent crimes, homicide, rapes, ag assaults, as you look, we're actually, even with our homicide numbers and our aggravated assaults, which are huge, we've really and truly been focusing our resources to address violent crime. We have all of our divisions on the front end really and truly fighting and making sure that we get the people in the right places so that we can have an impact. And of course, working with our business communities and other entities to really and truly change what we're seeing as it deals with violent crime. There will be many of the initiatives that you'll see going forward through this particular presentation. But so where we are overall is a 5% increase from this time last year is where we are, which are great numbers. When we look at 2020, as we look at it, that year was pretty much closed. So 2021, we were able to really and truly achieve a zero flat line at the end of that year, which was really a number that we didn't think we would ever be able to do. But it showed the effectiveness of the crime fighting throughout our department. So now we look at 2022, yet we're still on
we're still in line to really and truly meet those numbers and very well beat them. So what I'll say is that our units are certainly in the right places, doing the right things, really and truly focusing on those critical issues. We'll highlight one of the ones that we look at and knew we were having a burglary problem as we look on this particular week with week 37 burglaries. There was a 24% increase and then a 28-day of a 9% increase. And of course, we're up for the year-to-date 20%. But some of the great things that we're doing with the responses, there was a Ruby Child's restaurant to where we were really and truly having a lot of overnight burglaries where alcohol was the actual target. Certainly recognized that it was done by some of our unsheltered individuals, but we were able to make an arrest on those, which at this point, it looks as though we haven't had any more since then. So it was certainly an impact that we need. And of course, our burglary unit will continue to work to see if there are other cases that we can solve now that we have a little bit more information on one of the arrests that we were able to make. So certainly everybody's staying busy. As we move forward with the next slide, this shows, again, the 28-day overview of what we're seeing, crimes against persons. Over that 28-day, we've seen a 17% decrease. Another great situation. And then, of course, persons shot, we've seen in that 28-day a 52% decrease, which really and truly makes it for an overall a 17% drop, as well as a flat line overall for, again, that 28-day period. As we continuously look, and we know that we see that 83% for the sex crimes. However, when we look at that 28-day, there is nothing of any specific patterns. Most of it were, again, people who had relationships at some point. Some of them are unfounded, and then there are things that come up late notices and working with the hospitals to get those late calls. But again, there are no critical trends that we see that we need to worry about on those particular ones, but we'll continue to do some of the campaigns of reaching out and partnering, ensuring that we really and truly have those conversations so that people know how to really and truly prepare when they're going out and doing certain things where it concerns nightlife and other entities, so that we can all really and truly learn and be safe in how we mingle with folks and make dates or whatever the case may be, that we're safe and doing what we need to do. So we'll certainly continue our efforts. Moving forward with the next slide here, what we're looking at is an actual Operation Heat Wave, which we started around June 23rd, 2022. Really and truly want to mention all of our partners, because again, our goal has really been able to target gangs, guns, and illegal drugs and narcotics. So coming together, recognizing we had a robust plan, we pulled our gang unit, our crime suppression teams from all of these zones, our intel units throughout Homeland Security, Georgia State Patrol, Fulton County Sheriff Office, the Fulton County DA's office, and even the State Attorney General's office, to really and truly put a robust plan together about what's happening based on the intelligence that we've received through our special enforcement section. And rolling out that plan, we were able to make about 41 arrests, 30 of which ended up consisting of gang charges, which has been our focus, and then 19 guns recovered. So those are huge, because what it shows to us is that the activity that we're seeing throughout our city, that there is some type of association of a gang component in every single place. But what we're able to do is really and truly continue to work with those people to target the right folks to really and truly have successful operations like such, that we are methodical in how we do it, so we were able to safely get people off the streets with those guns, those things that are impacting our communities in a negative way. When we look at last year's time frame, of course, we're down 26% from aggravated assaults from where we were this time last year, down 14% from robberies, and down 29% on the homicides from where we were this time last year. So it's evident that we're in the exact right places doing the right things, and I think that if we keep our focus and we continue to partner and move forward with methodical and good constitutional policing, that we'll certainly be able to continue to drive our crime numbers in the right direction. Moving forward here, what I wanted to do is really highlight one of our investigations that we had with our auto crimes unit. Still touches that gang component. So our auto crimes enforcement unit, our fugitive unit, gang unit, and DeKalb County, along with alcohol, tobacco, firearms, ATF federal units. knowing that we have certain things going on, really and truly, our auto crimes unit was really able to kind of spur this piece up. And so what happened, they went out and they conducted this detail, and this particular detail was really and truly targeted towards vehicle break-ins, auto thefts, and that's what we're seeing. A lot of people will steal these vehicles, utilize them for purposes of going out and committing other crimes. In this particular one, we were able to get 2 gang members into custody based off of a specific stop that we were able to make. Jeremy Ingram, which was a gang member, as well as Emmanuel Robinson. Both of them had stolen auto-related type things, and we actually went in and looked at the firearms that were recovered. High Point FN 57, and what's critical about that FN 57 is although it is a handgun, it has a small rifle projectile to it, which means it can be extremely dangerous, very deadly weapon. So we were able to retrieve that off the street, along with a host of other guns. It really and truly shows us, as we continue to target those gangs and those drugs and those guns, that we're able to get the right people off the street, because we know, again, it's the gang component that we really have to stay focused on. And really and truly, from a proactive part with the police department, but then looking at other entities that we can bring in that could change the mindsets of those before they get involved with this activity, to really and truly show them where that lifestyle can lead you, and hopefully we can change their minds early on so that they won't go down that same road to continue that type of activity. Moving forward, we also have a peculiar one right here. So there was a burglary in a residence, burglary in progress call over in Zone 4 on Crestwell Circle. And so what ends up happening is Zone 4 beat officers responded, had a quick response, and was able to get one person in custody. An investigation went forward on that particular one. This was supposed to be a vacant home, but once they conducted their arrest, it turns out that this particular vacant home was being used for a narcotics location. Inside, again, we find guns, and we find drugs that were being utilized, and so we were able to make quick contact with the actual owners, who were able to determine that the house should be vacant, no one should be there. A lot of great arrests on this particular one. We were able to get 2 AR-15 semi-automatic assault weapons off the street, along with a number of, probably when you're looking at it, somewhere close to almost 30 pounds of narcotics. So again, in the right place, doing the right things, and getting those people off the street so that we can keep the city of Atlanta as safe as ultimately possible. Looks like we're kind of stuck here, and the next particular slide won't move forward. There we go. So where we are now, as we talked about earlier, the successes that we've had with our homicides. At this particular point, we're even to where we were last year, but to get methodical and look at what's happening with our homicides, we look at the actual motives to see what's happening, why it's happening, and really and truly who's involved. Number one is 36%, almost 37% of our homicides are escalating disputes with people who know each other. Then we have 6% narcotics related. There is a 10% that we can never determine specifically what the motive was, but we still work and solve those. Domestic disputes. Almost 10% of our homicides involve domestic situations where there are 2 people in the house, and for whatever reason an argument goes bad, whether it be a mother, father, sister, brother, or whatever the case may be, it results in someone losing their lives. Again, almost 16% for robberies, revenge, where something happened to someone and they knew exactly who it was, so they took it upon themselves to unfortunately do street justice. We're looking at about 9.6% on those particular ones. Sudden anger, unintended victims, where people are out just shooting and recklessly allowing projectiles for whatever reason to go down the road, and they're striking people, and unfortunately someone has succumbed. We've had 6 incidents like such with about 5% of our homicides. And then other one we really want to highlight as well, interrupted crimes, where there are people who maybe come back into a parking lot, come back to their car and find out
that someone is in the midst of breaking into their cars, and instead of dialing 911, they challenge those individuals. And we've had 2 people that were unfortunately killed as a result of trying to interrupt the specific crimes that were taking place. And of course, we always recommend that anytime anyone sees any activity like such, to not take it on their own, but to call 911, stay on the phone with our dispatchers, and let us respond in a high manner. That one would be prioritized because we have someone who's on the phone and watching and ensuring that we can get the information that we need to respond and take them into custody. And we've certainly had some of those recently in our downtown footprint where people did that, and we had quick responses, and we were able to take several individuals off the street just in those responses. So that's our message to our citizens, to ensure that they help us in that situation. Knowing that we see the domestic violence issues, we have a upcoming event October 6th that we're partnering with the annual Domestic Violence Resource Fair, where we're going out and partnering with them to really and truly bring awareness to what's happening, again, so that we can change what's happening inside of our homes while we're in there, so that we don't have the family violence issues that really escalate into those homicides. So we'll be partnering to bring those resources, to bring that awareness, and to bring that educational component really to our citizens. So we're hopeful that we'll really and truly have a great turnout and an impact to our city. Some of the partners that, again, that we'll be working with is the Fulton County Solicitor General's Office. The Domestic Violence Unit will be running the lead on it along with Zone 4. And so we just really and truly want to push that information out. Historically, we've also worked with the Prosecuting Attorneys Council so that we can look at how we respond and what we're doing and how we can get information out sooner than when we have those issues with domestic violence, that we can get warrants for those critical issues immediately and really get them out there on the street. So if there are any additional interactions with citizens, but more so police, that we'll have the information that we need to take those people off of the street a little quicker to keep anything from happening and keep our citizens safe. Moving forward with the Connect Atlanta, our video integration center, now real crime tracking center. At this particular point, we have increased our connectivity to over 15,000 cameras. So now we're looking at registered, we have about 5,500, and then those that have integrated, we are up to almost 9,600 when we look at the round offs on those. So having much success on those, still being able to really get out when we're having those incidents. We're able to really and truly go back, look at our camera network, and do what we need to do to get the information as quickly as we can to not just detectives, but beat officers on those responses, so that we can really and truly have a great, safe response. We're able to get the resources that we need in place quickly and resolve issues without any hurt, harm, or danger. Finally, as we get to our last slide here, these are a number of events that we have as we're looking and moving into our fall season. We've had a great summer response so far with what's happening with our operations, and so now we're really and truly having that community focus moving into the fall and holiday season. We'll have our great event that's annual, Guns and Hoses. We look to have a wonderful event with Atlanta Fire and Atlanta Police Department, and some of our other metro area partners will also participate. Yes, it's a fundraising event so that we really and truly go out to get the funds that we need so that we can continue to have a successful PAL program within the city of Atlanta, targeting the youth that we need so that we can really and truly have a positive impact on their lives. Additionally, Atlanta Pride Festival is coming up, so we've had a lot of planning in that when everything's going well. Faith in Blue, another big initiative that we have during October 7th through October 9th. We'll have a marquee event that will be in the Zone 5 footprint on that actual morning, that afternoon around 1 o'clock, right after everyone gets out of church. We'll have a great number of panel people that will be speaking to some very good key events, and there'll be a lot of community involvement with that as well. Of course, Shop with a Cop, our SES Fall Initiative, and then, of course, we got to get that holiday plan in place as we move into our late October into November, having a very safe holiday plan so that we can really and truly get back to a little bit of normalcy and have a great holiday
holiday season to where we won't have any type of crime issues and people can go out and buy the toys and the items that they really and truly need to get our positive focus back on the families. So a lot of events for APD, a lot of things that are happening in the community on a positive note and a lot of positive crime fighting. At that particular point, I'll certainly be able to answer any additional questions moving forward and to address whatever issues you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Peak. Before we go into questions and comments, should have done it earlier, but I'll recognize our colleague, Councilmember Boone, has joined us. With that, colleagues, questions, comments? Deputy Chief Peak, Councilmember Waits.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted to ask a question that both Councilmember Lewis and I were both concerned about. There was some concern in 12 with respect to the shooting and the rifle that was involved. Also, the notion somehow that all of the entire police recruit class was assigned to Buckhead. Is that actually true?
So I have to go back and look at the order to see exactly where. I do not recall that being the actual case. So, but I want to speak with intelligence and not say anything, but to my knowledge, no, we did not. I think our last class had about 15 to 16 individuals, and from my understanding, they were split between 2 different zones, if I'm not mistaken, but I want to be correct.
Okay, and I wouldn't want to put that out there if it's not true. But lastly, I'd love to catch up with you to figure out what we can do when we have these types of incidents in 12, because we've had these types of challenges before where we've had a delayed response, specific to the Dollar General and some other things that you're already aware of. So I prefer to talk offline further about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll be more than happy to get with you and we'll discuss it.
And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Deputy Chief? All right. Thanks so much, Deputy Chief Peak.
Thank you.
That will bring us to our consent agenda, items with favorable, unfavorable recommendations from the Law Department. We'll make a motion to accept all favorable claims, items 1 through 4. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Those items are favorable. I'll now make a motion to adverse all unfavorable claims, items 5 through 41. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll take my pick. I'll go with Councilmember Overstreet on the second. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is closed. Oh, I'm sorry. The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Those items are adverse. Moving on to our regular agenda. Ordinances for second reading, 22-0-1743.
An ordinance by Councilmember Dustin Hillis to authorize the mayor or his designee to authorize the chief financial officer to execute a master lease agreement with J.P. Morgan Chase Bank for the acquisition of 60 Dodge Chargers with police packages on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department in an amount not to exceed $2,736,970.65 and for other purposes.
Mr. Amon, having my notes, there may be a possible substitute to this, but noted it wasn't received. Is that still the case, or?
So we're waiting on the actual number for the emergency procurement for, I think, 10 of, it was done as sort of 50 and then an additional 10. So if you could pass on condition of receiving that actual number, that would be most appreciative.
All right.
Thank you.
I will make a motion on the condition that we receive that substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
Clarification, Mr. Chair. This is a dual referred item, so should the condition be before Wednesday?
Yes, that's acceptable.
Can you have it before Wednesday? Or
yes,
finance,
yes.
rather?
We'll
That's
have
fine.
it for finance, yes.
The vote is open. Please vote. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable on condition.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Next item, 22-0-1745.
An ordinance by Councilmember Byron Amos to amend the charter of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, adopted under and by virtue of the authority of the Municipal Home Rule Act of 1965, OCGA Section 36351, amended by amending Part 1, Chapter and Related Laws, Subpart A, Appendix 4, Citizens Review Board, Section 10A, Compensation Conflict of Interest Removal, to amend the Atlanta Citizens Review Board membership compensation and for other purposes.
All right, this is a charter amendment, requires 3 readings and 2 adoptions by the council. It also requires to be advertised, so to comply with that advertising requirement, I'll make a motion to hold. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
6 yeas, 0 nays. That item is held. Item number 3, 22-0-1748.
An ordinance by Councilmembers Jason Winston and Matt Westmoreland to amend the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Chapter 94, Human Relations, which prohibits discrimination throughout the city to include persons directly impacted by the criminal legal system in the class of persons who may be aggrieved by alleged discrimination or unlawful practices under the Human Relations Code in order to combat the long-term impacts of incarceration and for other purposes.
Thank you. And as noted, after public comment, administration has requested to hold this. I will make a motion to hold for 2 weeks, time certain. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
4 yeas, 2 nays. That item is held for 2 weeks, time certain. Item number 4, 22-0-1752.
An ordinance by Councilmember Howard Shook to authorize the mayor or his designee to authorize the chief financial officer to execute an intergovernmental agreement with Buckhead Community Improvement District for the acquisition of up to 10 Dodge Chargers on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department in amount not to exceed blank. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account number listed and for the purposes.
Mr. Raymond.
Yes, this is simply a financing mechanism. The CFO is appreciative of the coalition's willingness to provide us interest-free financing on these vehicles. So we're trying to scrounge up cars wherever we can.
And similarly, there's a note on here that there needs to be a substitute because there's no amount. So is the request the same?
Yes, the request is the same, please.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve on the condition that we receive that substitute, or that FEC receive that substitute on Wednesday. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Norwood. Do you also have a comment or question? Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Raymond, I know that there was an issue with vendor refurbishing our cars. Has that been resolved so that we are now paying that vendor and getting our police cars that back online?
Yes, we have, I don't know if that specific vendor invoice sort of audit process has been completed, but we do have 4 additional vendors that repair our cars that was procured via emergency procurement, and cars are flowing to those vendors. And we are now actually, we still have a lot of cars out, but it is improving. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Raymond, please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable on condition. Moving to resolutions, item number 5, 22R4397.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor and the chief of police to enter into reemployment temporary service agreements to be renewed annually, but for no more than 4 years with retired City of Atlanta police officers at the rank of lieutenant and below for the purposes of providing continuing public safety services for the City of Atlanta Police Department and for other purposes.
Is Ms. Pascal here? Because
I don't think she's here.
I usually see names and amounts attached to these, so maybe this is different.
This is just the standard recapture program.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 6, 22R 4398.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise renewal number 1, CP-G-1210272, vehicle rental with Enterprise Leasing Company of Georgia, LLC, utilizing State of Georgia statewide contract 99999 SPD ES 4019937-6IS-02 pursuant to 2-1602, Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code, City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department in an amount not to exceed $110,000.00 per year. All costs shall be charged to and paid from accounts listed below and for other purposes.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 7, 22R 4399.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to accept on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department a donation from the Atlanta Police Foundation of a 2019 Ford Transit van valued at approximately $38,250.00 and a 2022 Ford Transit van valued at approximately $59,515.00 for use as an additional Atlanta Police Department vehicle within the police athletic lead and for other purposes.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Item number 8, 22R 4400.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into renewal number 1 to agreement FC 9423 citywide clean and close services with Askews Construction and Home Inspection LLC on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Police Code Enforcement Section for a term of 1 year commencing on December 16th, 2022 through December 15th, 2023, in an amount not to exceed $1,400,000.00. All contracted work to be charged to and paid from the accounts listed below and for the purposes.
Captain, just a quick question if you'll come up to the podium. Just want to make sure this contractor has been performing favorably before we renew this.
Yes, and actually, before I answer that, I do want to acknowledge you for acknowledging Lieutenant Zach Kramer. He was a fine police officer. As a side note, he also worked the off-duty neighborhood patrol in District 8 in both the Margaret Mitchell and Peachtree Battle neighborhood to help supplement his income in supporting his 4 small children. So thank you very much for acknowledging him. I appreciate that.
Definitely.
So yes, we are satisfied with the service. As you know, this is part of the administrative in-rim process where locations are voted upon by the board to have the city clean and close, board up, clean up, and this is the contractor that does that, and we are satisfied with their service.
Thank you. And I know these vary depending on the size, but what is the typical cost of one clean and close?
I mean, obviously, it depends on you know, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial. You know, you can be anywhere from the $5,000 range, you know, all the way up to the $20,000, $30,000 range.
All right, thank you for that. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Item is favorable. Thank you, Captain. Next item, item number 9, 22R 4401.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise the second renewal option for FC 10631 Emergency Fire Dispatch Installation Software, Support and Maintenance with Medical Priority Consultants Incorporated, doing business as Priority Dispatch Corporation on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department for a term of 1 year, effective from December 12, 2022 through December 12, 2023, in amount not to exceed $58,420.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the Fund Department organization and account numbers listed herein and for the purposes.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Next item, item number 10, 22R4402.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department, Fulton County, Georgia, City of Alpharetta, City of College Park, City of East Point, City of Roswell, City of Union City, and City of Sandy Springs to apply for and accept a joint 2022 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance in the amount of $451,512.00 with no matching funds for the purpose of supporting law enforcement and criminal justice activities and for the purposes.
All right, thank you. Chief Peak or Mr. Amon, can you tell us? I know I've noticed there are a handful of, I guess, co-applicants, so I'm just curious as to what this would be used for.
Good afternoon again, Deputy Chief Peak. Historically, as we look at the JAG grants, we've utilized them for finance purposes, for overtime generally to look at it. I think what happens on the front end is that it's grouped together like such, but there's a breakdown. I don't have the specific numbers, but there's a breakdown for the other agencies and what percentages they get based off those manpower needs.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. I believe we can take the remaining items, item number 11, 12, 13, and 14 together. Those are 22R4403, 22R4404, 22R4405, and 22R4406 together, please.
A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the settlement of all bodily injury claims against defendants in the case of Calvin Andra Hunter versus City of Atlanta and Dejari Orlando Banks, civil action file number 22 MS 167782, pending in the Magistrate Court of Fulton County of Georgia in the amount of $11,000.00. The settlement amount, authorizing the settlement amount to be paid, to be charged to and paid from the account numbers listed herein, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the settlement amount and for other purposes. A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the settlement of all claims against defendant, City of Atlanta, in the case of Akila Wooten versus City of Atlanta, civil action file number 2021 CV 356090, pending in the Superior Court of Fulton County, Georgia, in the amount of $280,000.00. The settlement amount, authorizing the settlement amount to be charged to and paid from the account numbers listed, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the settlement amount and for other purposes. A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the settlement of all claims against the City of Atlanta in the case of Regina Fiscal versus City of Atlanta, civil action file number 20EV003184, Fulton County State Court, in the amount of $60,000, authorizing said amount to be paid as follows from the account numbers listed herein, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the total settlement amount and for other purposes. A resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the settlement of all claims against the City of Atlanta in the case of LaShonda Curry versus City of Atlanta, Georgia, civil action file number 20EV002658, Fulton County State Court, in the amount of $575,000, authorizing said amount to be paid from the account numbers listed herein, authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to distribute the total settlement amount and for other purposes.
I'll make a motion to approve those 4 items, item number 11 through 14. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Boone. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Those 4 items are favorable. I believe that completes our legislative agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Colleagues, questions, comments, well wishes?
Yes,
Boone.
I would like to get the officer who passed, I would like his address so that we can send him something and do what we normally do as a body. Please provide all of his information. You all have our deepest sympathy. Thank you.
If you could just send all the council members an email about the services and the address that Councilmember Boone requested. Anything else, colleagues? All right, we'll make a motion. We adjourn on unanimous consent of members present. We are adjourned. Thank you.